So for those who aren't aware, my instrument of choice is a bass guitar. I'm okay at it, I think. Like many musicians who choose a particular instrument, there are a range of bass guitarists that have inspired me in various ways over my time playing, across many different styles and genres, as well as bassists I just really respect and admire generally. So I figured, why not make a series out of just rambling about like 3 of them per video? That's what I'll be doing today, so strap in, for I'll be gushing about some pretty cool low-end stringed players. I'm gonna get my favorite band out of the way first. Lucas Harwood is an interesting case, as he doesn't really play bass on all of the albums King Gizzard releases, but he does contribute to a majority of the Giz catalog at the very least. I think in terms of early Giz, his work on Mindfuzz, Nonagon, and Quarters are very emblematic of his style. He had 2 drummers to lock into, which the rest of the band didn't have to worry about as much, so the fact he was able to keep up with both Eric and Cavs as well as playing some pretty fast-paced and complex lines is all the more impressive. Even after Eric's departure, Giz continued to make more and more complex compositions, and part of the reason many of these songs work so well is because of the accompanying bass parts Lucas plays. I think Flight B741, Phantom Island, and pretty much everything from 2022 and 2017 excels in showing what Lucas is capable of as a bassist. Of course, Joey and on the odd occasion Stu and even Cookie will sometimes record Lucas's bass parts instead, but even when he does play those songs that he didn't record or write bass lines for live, he still does a kick-ass job playing them. His own band, Heavy Boss, is one I've yet to sit down and properly listen to, but from the little I've heard, his bass playing is excellent there. I actually have the privilege to receive bass tips from Lucas from a Reddit AMA, and it definitely helped me quite a bit since then. I think the Mindfuzz suite is a really good example of what Lucas brings to King Gizzard, with some other songs worth mentioning being Ice 5, The Great Chain of Being, Phantom Island, Robot Stop, and The River. I see a lot of Gizheads doom post about Lucas leaving the band and him being too busy to keep up with the constant releases and tours, and even though he is a dad with like 2 kids at least that he's constantly doing stuff with, I don't see that stopping him since he's stuck around for so long, and while he is the most infrequent contributor to King Gizzard, he demonstrates that when he is around, his presence is appreciated and distinct, and he's an important part of the Giz sound. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, I heard Roundabout and the album it came from, Fragile, for the first time, and let me tell you, when the bass kicked in, something clicked immediately. Chris Squire is in contention for one of, if not my favorite bassists of all time. Roundabout is easily the song that defines him, and probably the song that's responsible for me becoming a bassist eventually, because it includes every possible trick he was known for, whether it's the rapid fire playing, usage of ghost notes, and just generally being 200% levels of kick-ass. Squire always delivered to being a cherry on top to every Yes song he was a part of. I find it really funny that he never played a Squire or Fender bass and instead opted to use a Rickenbacker. If only if I had that money. Of course, Chris Squire isn't just a funny British cape-wielding man who plays the bass really fast. And You and I and To Be Over are some of my all-time favorite songs, and those bass lines are relatively simple and very laid back compared to what he's known for, and that's really important to note when appreciating Squire. There's an opinion I hold that I go to say many times as I talk about people like Chris Squire, and I'll start saying it here. You're not a virtuoso if you don't know when to dial things back, and this is what makes Squire a true virtuoso in my eyes. You'll hear the intro to Heart of the Sunrise and think Chris Squire is absolutely shit hot and some god, and you'd be right in saying that. But I think in order to really say that in confidence, you need to listen to songs like the aforementioned And You and I and To Be Over to really get his technique. Squire understood the assignment for every song and album, whether it be Starship Trooper, Roundabout, Close to the Edge, The Gates of Delirium, and several others. That's not even going over quite possibly his most well-known bass line, Owner of a Lonely Heart. I think the reason this song works so well is because of Squire's harmonizing with their at-the-time guitarist Trevor Rabin's playing. No wonder why it's so iconic. If there was a conversation for artists who helped define the instrument and what it's capable of, Chris Squire is an absolutely crucial component to that conversation. It's impressive to me that he was one of the founders of Yes and by far the longest serving member, having recorded 21 albums with them all the way until his death in 2015, with 2014's Heaven and Earth being the final album featuring his contributions. I credit Chris Squire as my biggest influence, and I could go on all day about how great he is. I just can't play most of his songs because I've only been playing for 2 years at this Fraxy as a cunt. Man, what an unfortunately short career Cliff Burton had. Only recorded 3 albums with Metallica and featuring a writing credit on To Live Is To Die on And Justice For All. You know, the album infamous for basically removing the bass from the mix. It's crazy to think how impactful Burton was during his relatively short career. I guess the best way I could describe it is that Burton reinvented the bass guitar at the same time frame Jimi Hendrix reinvented the guitar. Similar to Chris Squire, Cliff Burton was one of those bassists that used so many different techniques to create interesting and compelling lines. One of my favorite techniques of Burton's is how he arpeggiates a chord and runs with it, with the iconic bass solo Anastasia Pulling Teeth, utilizing arpeggiated D minor and C major chords. It gives the solo a sound I can only describe as almost hypnotic. Of course, part of that may be due in part to him using a fuzz pedal. Fuzz pedal's my beloved, but that should discredit how fucking hard this rips. There's a reason it's so iconic. Cliff Burton was, evidently, influenced heavily by classical music, and you can really hear that in his playing. I think the entirety of Ride the Lightning is an incredible demonstration of what he brought to the table. That is easily one of my favorite metal albums of all time, but with Master of Puppets, the title track, and Welcome Home Sanitarium are also excellent displays of his playing. Cliff Burton should also be discussed as players who defined the bass guitar, and it fucking sucks that he was taken away from us so soon, but I guess we could see comfort in knowing that he helped inspire so many people even if he was alive for such a short time. I actually tried practicing Anastasia while writing this section, and man, this is gonna take some practice, but I think I'm getting it. I don't know, maybe it's just my dyspraxia. So that's where I'll leave it for today. I have 3 more basses lined up to talk about for my next video about the subject, but for now, I'll leave at these 3. What do you think about these bassists? Any songs that demonstrate their capabilities that I haven't mentioned? Any bassists that you feel like would be worth a listen? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, feel free to like and subscribe.